Back in the deep depths of 1996, a massive online world was released to the public. Coming off the back of old school graphics based multi-user dungeons, also known as MUDs, Furcadia promised to offer players a world of near infinite possibilities. But what went wrong? This is the story of the rise and fall of Furcadia. So right off the bat, I'd recommend watching Ash Coyote's The Fandom to see the full origins of the furry fandom, but for this video we'll be starting off in the early to mid 90s with Internet Relay Chat. Internet Relay Chat, or IRC, was a very early chat room system, a little like Discord but without any kind of image or voice chat or video chat, just super basic and the precursor to everything we have today. Naturally, furries flocked to these services, forming groups and friendships that created pretty much everything we know of the online fandom scene today. A lot of people used it as a way to meet people, hang out, and of course do furry roleplay. Now, IRC was great, I used to use it way back when, but it's very basic. There are no images, so everything's hosted externally, and it makes it very difficult to have a kind of back and forth roleplay experience if you're doing roleplay or even if you're just chatting, which led to the rise of MUDs. So to fully understand why Furcadia got huge, especially within the furry fandom of the mid to late 90s, we need to first look at the early multiplayer PC experiences of the time. Now, back in the 1990s, graphics in games were still very basic, and I mean, some games didn't even use graphics and preferred to use text, as it was a kind of easier way to explore complex themes, mechanics, and descriptions, which leads us nicely onto multi-user dungeons, or MUDs. These are mostly text-based, roleplay heavy multiplayer environments and were the precursor to pretty much every modern MMORPG game that we currently have on the market. In the late 1990s, after advancements in 2D graphics came about, there was a rise in graphical MUD games, such as God Wars 2 and Alter Aeon, some of the most popular in the genre. These later went on to being referred to as MMORPGs. David Dr. Cat Shapiro was a former employee of Origin Systems, one of the early titans of role-playing gaming, having created the Ultima series, followed of course by Ultima Online, which I'm sure a few of you have heard of or played. It was huge at the time. Dr. Cat's first foray into multiplayer game creation was his project Dragon Spires. It was a classic MMO style game with creativity and friendships at the core, a stark comparison to other MUD games of the time. The game received great acclaim from many different firms, including Origin Systems themselves. Following from this success, Dr. Cat went on to start a new project to expand on the ideas of Dragon Spires, a project you might just have heard of. Furcadia released to the public on December 16th, 1996 by Dr. Cat's outfit, Dragon's Eye Productions Inc. The game, never intended to be an exclusively furry game, served as the first anthropomorphic MMORPG as we would know it today. The team originally started as just Dr. Cat and Manda, later expanding to include a number of other employees such as executive producer Emerald Cat, programmer Alexei Askainen, Ben Jans, the game's design director, and community manager Michael Von Dung, just to name a few. Now naturally, I've got no definitive way of figuring out when the height of popularity is, but I thought that Google Trends might be the first place to start. I can see that between 2004 and 2006, that seems to be when the height of popularity was, with it trailing off just after 2010 to some honestly quite sad figures. But to put this in perspective, it was one of the biggest, most popular free-to-play MMORPG games of its time. They boasted 70,000 registered users and anything from 2,000 to 4,000 active players at any time, which for the time was really impressive considering that online gaming wasn't quite what it is today. In 2010, Furcadia was officially entered into the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest running social MMORPG, which at the time celebrated running for 13 consecutive years, which in and of itself is a huge achievement. But unfortunately, this is a rise and fall video, so as much as I'd love to say the game is still going strong and it's popular as ever, there is rise and there is fall. Unfortunately, Furcadia didn't really move with the times, bearing in mind that less than 4 years after the initial release, we had Habbo Hotel, which is continuing to be updated to this day, and stands up to modern standards of kind of video games. The graphics are still very modern for what is essentially now almost a 20-year-old game. And of course we also had Club Penguin from 2005 onwards. These two games really took over in the social MMORPG aspect, and it just left Furcadia in the dust graphically. The graphics of both of these games are way better than Furcadia. The control schemes are much better, it's a lot easier to control, a lot easier to get into. The monetization schemes of the games also are a lot cheaper, a lot more concise, and it was a better way to get repeat paying members and to bring more people in, as well as it being easier for players to get started in those games. One of my biggest gripes about it is the pricing scheme. Now, it isn't too bad for what it is, it's a decent concept, it's just the execution is quite poor in my opinion. The game itself is free to play, and there are a number of anthropomorphic avatars you can play as. The way monetization of the game works is that they sell other avatars, or rather, they rent out other avatars. You can rent an avatar for anything from a few months to a year, or you can outright buy it, though it can be pretty expensive. This is of course quite poor in comparison to other games of the genre such as Habbo Hotel, where most of the designs, the majority, are all free for you to mix and match at the start of the game, and they sell other items in the game to earn their revenue. Now, Furcadia is very in-depth. You can build your own place, code it up, but in Habbo you could buy furniture and make your place very quickly. It was very easy to build an area for people to play in, and it streamlined the whole experience to make it easier for newer members. So to combat some of these criticisms, in 2012 they released a Kickstarter campaign to try and give it a fresh lick of paint and breathe some new life into it. They raised more than $100,000 to fund future development, the project being titled The Second Dreaming. We were promised a lot in the Second Dreaming update. There was a promised overhaul of the graphics and UI to bring the game into the 21st century, an improved client so you could get into the game quicker, redesigned art, and a web client so no more download required. A mobile version of the game was released just before the Second Dreaming project went live, but it was taken off of iOS due to Apple's policies on adult content. Now, I'm sure I have no doubts in my mind that they are working on it, but production seems to have ground to a halt post-2015 with very few updates and very little in the way of community interaction regarding where they're at with it. And unfortunately this has taken a toll on the player base, waning to the lowest lows it's ever seen. And that is the true fall of Furcadia. Things are just taking too long, leaving the game stale, no new players are coming to the game, and the existing players, they're just getting bored and leaving, moving on to other things like Discord for their chat-based roleplay needs, or one of the big 3D social MMORPGs on the market. On the 23rd of June 2003, a newcomer to the MMO landscape of the early 2000s opened their doors. Created by Linden Labs, Second Life would quickly change the future of the social MMORPG scene by adding full 3D models and allowing customization beyond the limits previously experienced. This wasn't the final nail in the coffin, at least at this point, but it hit Furcadia really hard early on. In Furcadia you could adjust the colours of existing avatars, whereas in Second Life you could make something completely new and original, and it of course naturally attracted a furry following. Unfortunately at this stage Furcadia did very little in terms of upgrading what they had to try and tackle this. They just sort of stuck with their model as it was. A year later, IMVU Inc. released their flagship product, IMVU, a similar concept to Second Life but more accessible and easier to get into, likewise with a big furry fanbase due to the 3D graphics and heavy customization options. In recent years, IMVU has made leaps and bounds into a fully web-based client and a full in-depth mobile app, which has obviously helped push it out to their 6 million active players and beyond. Naturally, not all these players are furries, but there's still a huge number there that almost definitely are, so there's a lot of competition on the market. Now, it's probably easy to watch this video and think that I hate Furcadia. Yes, I'm jaded. Yes, I'm frustrated. I'm just more than anything annoyed at the state they've let this game get into, because generally I love this game. I think it holds a lot of potential. Personally, I really like 2D games. I think I prefer 2D games. Don't know why, I just like the pixel art style. And I have so many fun memories of Furcadia, and I miss that. Recently I tried getting back into it, and honestly the most people I ever saw online was about 500, and they were all AFK in Furcadia Nights, the 18+ section. And of course, because everybody is AFK, nobody's talking, there's no real sense of community, so any newcomers that are trying to join, they're coming to basically nothing because there's no community to get involved in. It's been almost 10 years since the second Dreaming was greenlit through Kickstarter. Unfortunately, I think the whole ship has sailed. It's just too little too late, and I doubt the game will ever truly recover, which is sad because I really enjoy this game, and there are things like Discord coming along and social MMOs with, you know, the 3D Titans, Second Life, IMVU, allowing the more in-depth customization and having the big communities that they've built that are just taking over. One thing I do have to say is that the people that work on this game, especially Dr. Cat, clearly love this project. They've kept the servers running for years at this point and are still in the Guinness World Record book. They still hold the record because they clearly care about this project, something that you don't see in a lot of MMORPG products. Normally, if they start to fail, they're done. They close the servers, doors closed, goodbye everybody. So there we go, that was the history of the rise and fall of Furcadia. One final note, if you do want to relive some of those old Furcadia dreams, you can go and check out Fading Memories on YouTube. I'll put the link in the description. They upload tour videos, which you might have seen throughout this video. Now, this is very different to my other videos, and it took a really long time to write, record, and especially edit, so I really hope you enjoyed it. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.